Hello, folks, and welcome back. We are once again continuing our coverage of the Stockholm Regional Championships VGC edition of 2025. And today, in the top 16, we have some pretty big names in the VGC scene. Eric Rios and Marco Silva here. Both have seen a ton of success throughout their VGC careers, multiple tops, multiple regional wins, both very, very good players we've seen across the board. And Eric Rios here is bringing a Lunala team, taking advantage of that Shadow Shield, pairing it with the Rillaboom to end leftovers to get the max amount of recovery, protect, Calm Mind, Moongeist Beam, and Moonblast with the Terra Fairy. Incineroar here with the Terra Water, Rocky Helmet, Parting Shot, Flare Blitz, Taunt, Fake Out, no knockoff is the big thing here. Ogerpon with the Spiky Shield, Ivy Culture, Power Up, and Follow Me, a little bit of redirection and some damage. Tornadus here with the Ability Shield, as well as Terra Dark, Protect, Bleak Wind Storm, Rain Dance, and Tailwind Screamtail as well. Here again, a very annoying supportive Pokemon with Terra Grass, Booster Energy, Protect, Disable, Dazzling Gleam, and Encore, then Rillaboom, as we said before, with that Grassy Surge and Grassy Glide, Fake Out, Woodhammer, and U-Turn. So a couple of big Fake Out users here, and a really annoying Encore on the Screamtail. This notably is not Parasong at all. No, nothing along those lines for the Screamtail here. It is meant to be purely annoying and frustrating to deal with. The Lunala is kind of physical damage pairings with that Rillaboom, Incineroar, and Ogerpon here are pretty notable. Incineroar, since it needs to do more damage on this team, Flare Blitz is pretty big, even though that Tornadus does have Rain Dance. That Rain Dance is there to overwrite any potential other weather settings you want to have. And Eric is going to be all about getting this Lunala up, active, calm-minded up, and ready to rumble. If you can get as many uses out of that Shadow Shield as possible, you're feeling good if you are Eric Rios. Now, on the other side of things, Marco Silva here, bringing a super standard Miraidon team with those choice specs, Terra Fairy, Dazzling Gleam, Electric, Draco Meteor, and Volt Switch. Whimsicott as well, we've seen it plenty of times, Covert Cloak and Terra Dark. Again, Encore, Moonblast, Tailwind, and Light Screen. Encore, super annoying. Frigoraph here to block opposing Fake Outs. Psychic, Foul Play, Helping Hand, and Trick Room feels really good with that Electric Seed and Terra Water. Urshifu Water here. This is a Mystic Water, Terra Water, Surging Strikes, Aqua Jet, Detect, and Taunt Urshifu. Again, we see a ton of different builds of Urshifu Rapid Strike here. This is the Taunt Mystic Water style. Ogerpon as well on this, but this is the Hearth Flame with Focus Energy and Ivy Cudgel, trying to get the maximum out of those critical hits. Spiky Shield and Follow Me as well for some redirection and support. And then Iron Hands to round things out with Fake Out, Drain Punch, Low Kick, and Heavy Slam. Notably, no electric moves here. Iron Hands doesn't feel all that great up against Lunala, unless maybe that Lunala is terrestrialized. You can go for some heavy slams. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Iron Hands, but then again, these players are pretty darn good and definitely have some good game plans going into this. For Eric Rios, Lunala can tank a lot of damage, but Miraidon can hit incredibly hard. Rillaboom, the terrain war here is going to be a big thing to take note of. Rillaboom and Miraidon are both going to be switching in and out a ton here, unless Marco Silva is just going for a more aggressive physical option, something like the Urshifu and Ogerpon leading, or maybe even the Iron Hands and Urshifu just try to get additional damage out. Speed control here could be pretty big for Eric. Getting Tailwind set up from the Tornadus could be very, very huge. At the same time, Marco could also be pretty well prioritizing getting Frigoraph onto the field and setting up Trick Room, but it is going to be the Whimsicott paired with the Miraidon here, leading things off for Marco Silva. And on the other side, for Eric Rios, we see the Rillaboom and the Ogerpon make its presence. So Rillaboom is going to overwrite this Electric Terrain immediately, and a lot of times when we see these terrain wars start off, we're going to see switches at least out of the one that doesn't have terrain up already. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Miraidon switch out here. Whimsicott can't get hit by Fake Out, so we could be seeing a Tailwind get set up to allow Marco to get that speed control early. At the same time, Whimsicott could potentially switch out for a Frigoraph. This Miraidon could be trying to get some damage in early, potentially with a Volt switch into either of these Pokemon. Now, Ogerpon here, probably in a good spot to try to get some damage out. You're not going to be too worried about taking a ton of damage for either of these Pokemon. Neither one is going to be going down in one hit to this Miraidon. Rillaboom should be surviving even through a Draco Meteor, and Ogerpon has that sturdy ability. The potential threat there would be maybe Whimsicott gives you a double up, but we do see the Whimsicott switch out. Again, wouldn't be surprised to see the Frigoraph here. It's an Urshifu actually making its way on to the battlefield. So coming in the face of two grass type Pokemon, we do see the Fake Out from the Rillaboom here. That's telling me we're going to see the Ivy Cudgel. Now, where is that going into? It's going into the Urshifu. It's not going to be super effective, and it doesn't do a ton of damage, but it gets at least a little bit of chip down. This should put it in range of Grassy Glide from the Rillaboom if that Rillaboom is not even max attack yet. So Urshifu under a lot of pressure. Miraidon not able to get a big move out here. Ogerpon notably can also redirect a potential Surging Strikes, or it might not even want to stay in for it, potentially switching out. Now, for Eric, you do not have to worry about Electric Terrain getting set up. This is the risk that Marco took. And so now the thing that Eric mainly has to worry about is Frigoraph in the bag. And since we're seeing Urshifu, Miraidon, and Whimsicott, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see it. I I'm reading here that at least my read would be that Marco has the opposing Ogerpon Hearthflame in the back. Still a good switch into a potential Grassy Glide, so you might want to go ahead and move away from that, because at the same time, you might be able to get away with a Power Whip from this Ogerpon. We do see a swap out though, Rillaboom staying in, and Eric going for the swap here. Lunala making its way out onto the battlefield now. Immune to fighting type moves, but not immune to this Aqua Jet, which does break the Shadow Shield here, and Draco Meteor comes through now. This might be enough. Not quite. Lunala surviving on 15 HP, and it's no Grassy Glide. It's Wood Hammer coming through from the Rillaboom, guaranteeing that this Urshifu goes down no matter what. Urshifu down, that means Lunala can potentially protect and start trying to recover some HP here. And again, Marco Silva doesn't get a turn to get this electric terrain up. Miraidon now at -2 attack. You are heavily incentivized if you are Marco Silva to switch this Miraidon out. And for Eric, that could mean a pretty safe target into that slot, or you go ahead and switch your Rillaboom out into another Pokemon, and you might have a pretty safe switch in depending on what gets brought in here. And it is the Hearthflame Ogerpon for Marco Silva. So Rillaboom under a little bit of pressure. Lunala for Eric, again, doesn't feel too bad about playing a little bit more defensively here. And this Miraidon for Marco in a pretty tough spot at -2 already. Now, notably, most Rillabooms are Terra Fire, and that is the case for Eric here. And so going for Terra Fire up against a potential Fire-type Ivy Cudgel feels pretty good. Marco is switching that Miraidon out. Pretty understandable there, and Whimsicott makes its appearance onto the battlefield. We see a Terastallization coming through here. I'm not sure whose hat is which here. It is indeed Eric that is going for that Terastallization first. I think that the read there is that Marco shouldn't be going for the Terastallization. Rillaboom should be slower than the opposing Ogerpon. So Rillaboom going for that Terra Fire, going to feel perfectly fine, taking a potential Fire type attack. Lunala is faster than Ogerpon here, which is honestly a little bit surprising. Whimsicott goes down to half HP, and it is a focus energy coming from the Ogerpon. So it is going to be hitting some critical hits, but Rillaboom gets to go for a U-turn now. It also gets to come off the field on this turn. Marco, even if he can bring in the Miraidon, it is simply going to get immediately overwritten by that Rillaboom making its way back out onto the battlefield. And Eric gets to bring in his own Ogerpon now, which has a wonderful matchup into that Hearthflame Ogerpon. Now, Lunala gets to restore a little bit more HP. It stayed on the field very, very comfortably. Honestly, I think if you're Eric, you don't necessarily mind if Lunala goes down here. Rillaboom has been doing a ton of work, and this Ogerpon is absolutely ready to rumble. Whimsicott for Marco. Primary move here, you do have the ability to use Light Screen, but Tailwind does come through. This should allow your Ogerpon to move faster. It should guarantee that your Miraidon is going to be the fastest thing on the field no matter what when it comes through. We do see the Ivy Cudgel come in. This is going to be a critical hit, but it doesn't even take Ogerpon down to this 30. He stays on 5 HP. This Ivy Cudgel is going to be super effective, and it does take down the opposing Ogerpon with a critical hit. No focus energy there. That feels rough if you are Marco Silva, dedicating a whole move slot to that when Eric just has to get a little bit lucky. Sometimes lucky's better than good, but that Ivy Cudgel is pulling through. The Moongeist Beam coming out, takes out the Whimsicott, and Miraidon is going to be in a really, really tough spot. A 1v4. Miraidon is a super strong Pokemon. It can even Terastallize away from that electric or dragon typing. Go into that Terra Fairy. Dazzling Gleam here could do a lot of work, but I don't know if it would be enough. Now, I think if you're Marco, you're in the top 16, you got to start thinking about the next game already, because this one is already not feeling very good. But, you might as well try. You might as well take the time to try to win this game. Personally, that's my personal opinion, especially when this Ogerpon and Lunala are on relatively low HP. You don't know what's in the back necessarily, but you got to at least try for it. You might get disabled by the Jigglypuff looking thing. Screamtail, always forget its name, by the Screamtail in the back, and that could end it, but go for it. It's Dazzling Gleam or bust here for Marco. And for Eric, I think you can just pretty comfortably get Rillaboom in on the next turn. Just sacrifice one of your dudes here. It's actually Electro Drift or bust here for Marco. Yeah, I don't think you have enough time for that. Ogerpon going to be going for an Ivy Cudgel here. This should do about a third or some. A little bit over half to the Miraidon, notably. So yeah, this, if you're Marco, locking into the Electro Drift there. Now you can only target one Pokemon down at a time. That will indeed be all she wrote here. Moonblast will be super effective unless we see the Terastallization here, but no. Marco concedes, and Eric Rios takes game number 1. I think keeping Miraidon in there for so long, I understand the gambit, right? It's definitely a gamble for Marco Silva. You're anticipating the Rillaboom switches out. You're trying to make plays around that, around the anticipated strategy, but sometimes the reason that those strategies work is because they're just good. And unless you're expecting your opponent to make a misplay, it's really, really hard to work out. Because Rillaboom, when Grassy Terrain is on the field, yes, Rillaboom is threatened for sure by the Miraidon, but the Miraidon was not in a very good spot with the Ogerpon on the field. It takes half damage from that, like half of its HP from that Ogerpon, which is not something that you want to be dealing with. And so that just put it under so much pressure that Eric was able to play around it really, really well. Now, going into the second game, I think if you're Marco, maybe you try to play that Switch War a little bit more aggressively. Again, I don't think Iron Hands is necessarily going to be the play. I wouldn't be surprised to see Farigiraf. I think Farigiraf would really be quite good because you know Rillaboom is coming in on the other side. There's no way it's not. And Farigiraf tends to match up pretty well into it. So we might see that. We might see Marco go for a pretty similar split gameplay though here. And coming in, it's the exact same lead for Marcus over the Miraidon and the Whimsicott, and Eric brings the exact same as well. There have been a lot of times where we've seen players handshake those first couple of turns, and for Marco, we saw that Whimsicott switch out previously. It is immune to fake out. That could be something that we see go a little bit differently here. Marco could potentially keep the Whimsicott in, go for Encore on the Rillaboom after it goes for a fake out here. You know, that's pretty pesky, but Eric also has some other alternatives. Again, based off the previous game, Whimsicott tempted to switch out here. Miraidon, though, could also be going for something more aggressive, or more defensive, rather. It went for the attack last time. This is an opportunity for Eric to say, all right, Marco's plan didn't work in the previous game. This could be where Marco says, okay, fine, we will handshake the Swapperoos. I need to get Miraidon off the field. But no, Marco stays in. Ogerpon goes for that spiky shield here, and Eric, anticipating correctly, no fake out, and this Miraidon is trying to target down the Ogerpon. So Rillaboom going for an attacking move here, and it's a double target. Marco trying to get this Ogerpon off the field as fast as possible, but Eric reads it, and Rillaboom gets to make a move. U-turn into the Miraidon, gets some damage out, and now Eric gets to bring in Pokemon number 3. Marco not able to get anything set up on this turn. And for Eric, we get to see that Incineroar is the other Pokemon in the back, and Lunala is coming in. So Lunala feeling good with the Shadow Shield. We know this thing is probably not going down to a potential Draco Meteor, and at the same time, Eric is now in a spot where a potential Moonblast should do a number to the opposing Miraidon. You also might be able to click Calm Mind if you're willing to sacrifice the Ogerpon, but I don't know if that's necessarily the play you want to make. Right now, again, this Miraidon is under a lot of pressure. We could see it go for a Terastallization here, but it's not locked into Dazzling Gleam. It is locked into Draco Meteor. So a lot of times we see players want to try to reset that move of choice if they are not locked into where their Terra wants to be. We do see Eric go for the swap, though. Ogerpon retreating back into Incineroar, notably. So fake out pressure once again applicable, at least on the next turn. And Incineroar with Rocky Helmet as well. I believe Volt Switch will cause Miraidon to take a good bit of damage there, but we'll have to see. We do see Terastallization coming through. Again, this is for Marco, I believe, and it is going into that Terra Fairy for the Lunala. The big thing here for Eric Rios is that this guarantees Draco Meteor won't do none of nothing into this Lunala right now, and at worst, you have a little bit of chip damage to worry about from this Whimsicott. But Whim is just going for that light screen here, guaranteeing that Lunala isn't going to be doing quite as much damage, and Draco Meteor is going into Incineroar, that Ogerpon slot. Incineroar, though, feeling pretty good, tanking it incredibly well. Moonblast coming out now. This should be going into Miraidon and will be super effective. I don't think it'll take it down. Yeah, that light screen coming in pretty big here, but Miraidon now has to worry about Fake Out plus another Moonblast, and this Whimsicott not really feeling great here. You can go for Tailwind still. You can go for Encore potentially into the Lunala if you want to lock it into Moonblast. Moongeist Beam is a little bit more of a scarier move out of the Lunala, at least in the long run, I would imagine. But with this Terra Fairy, Moonblast is feeling incredibly, incredibly powerful. And Marco says, all right, we're getting out of here. Miraidon can't do nothing now. Miraidon swaps out. Ogerpon Hearthflame comes back in. Can take a Flare Blitz a little decently, I would say, but I don't know if that's what Incineroar is going for, and Eric Rios makes the call that Miraidon's switching out, and Rillaboom makes its way back onto the battlefield. This is actually very, very interesting. Moonblast comes through. Rillaboom's going to take that very, very well, but special attack drop, big whoop, but now the Rillaboom's on the field. When Miraidon comes back in, that electric terrain is going to be safe for at least a turn. So, or, well, actually, maybe not. Rillaboom could go for a U-turn here. Moongeist Beam goes into the Ogerpon. Again, Eric reading a little bit of a switch here, and Fire does resist Fairy, so Moongeist Beam feeling pretty good. So Rillaboom does have the opportunity to go for Fake Out into that Ogerpon here. Ogerpon, again, that spiky shield, a little bit of a, chicken, what's it called? A game of chicken, that's what it's called. A little bit of a game of chicken whenever there's a fake out user and a spiky shield user on the field, and Eric Rios wins that one. He doesn't flinch. Ogerpon takes some damage, but we do get the encore into the Rillaboom. So guaranteeing that it will either have to switch out or just fail to use a fake out on the next turn. Moongeist Beam coming through again will take Ogerpon down to a little bit below a third of its HP. Yeah, down to about a quarter or a fifth, somewhere around there, but Ogerpon does not get a chance to move. So Eric, now very incentivized to get this Rillaboom off the field. Again, Miraidon is in the back. You're already locked into fake out here, so a swap makes just tons of sense here. And as well, Incineroar can come in and get an Intimidate down onto the Ogerpon. Eric also has the opportunity to just go for Moongeist Beam into the Ogerpon slot as well, force it to either protect or go down, quite frankly, neither of which is very appealing to Marco, and we're already seeing that there's not going to be a switch coming through. Focus Energy, I feel like at this point is just not going to feel very good, and so it is just going to be that spiky shield. If you're Eric, you go for the hard read here and try to get some damage into the Whimsicott. Finally, Moonblast does take down the Incineroar. That is pretty big, so Eric will have to bring in either the Ogerpon or the Rillaboom here. Moongeist Beam is just going into the Ogerpon slot, so good call by Marco. Lunala not able to get any damage out on this turn, and Eric Rios is now down a Pokemon. That said, there's still a decent amount of damage that Marco has to do here. Both Ogerpon and Rillaboom at basically full HP, and this Lunala is still feeling pretty darn good. Eric does decide to bring in the Ogerpon here, not wanting to reset the grassy terrain yet. Again, very aware that Miraidon in the back can make that electric terrain happen at any time. So we're in that spot now for Marco where priority numero uno is to get this Rillaboom onto the field and take it down before you are forced to bring Miraidon back out. Again, big win conditions for these terrain wars or weather wars. Also goes, the same goes for saying, get that setter onto the field and have your opponent stuck on 2 Pokemon. If Marco can KO this Ogerpon or even the Lunala, although that's a little bit of a tougher ask, then you are at a spot where the Rillaboom is forced to come in. You can bring Miraidon in, find some way to do it. You'll get electric terrain up, and it'll stay up for what should be the remainder of the game. Eric has a much taller task to do that. Whimsicott and Ogerpon both on the field, but there is a world where they can both go down. Ogerpon is weak, and Whimsicott is not exactly the strongest thing on the field. Ivy Cudgel comes through, does a decent amount into the opposing Ogerpon, but no crit means nada. Ivy Cudgel from the rock type is going to take down the opposing Hearthflame Ogerpon, and now all Lunala has to do here really is take out this Whimsicott, which it's not incapable of doing, but we'll see how much of the Moonblast does. I wouldn't be surprised if Whimsicott stays just barely alive, and yeah, it actually takes it perfectly well with that light screen. So Marco now the one having to bring in Pokemon number 3 or Pokemon number 4 here, and it is going to be the Urshifu. Urshifu, while it doesn't like seeing Rillaboom or honestly even this Lunala right now, it doesn't mind going up against this Ogerpon Cornerstone. Lunala does have a super effective Moonblast ready for it. Urshifu can Terrasilize away from it into that Terra Water, but it should already be able to take down Ogerpon from this spot, and you don't really want to Terrasilize your Urshifu into the water type when Rillaboom can just make another appearance on the field and take him out really, really easily. And again, this Miraidon is going to struggle if it's in a 1v1 with this Lunala if you do not have Terrasilization. Even if it does Terrasilize, it's still going to be very difficult for it to take down. And notably, this Lunala has not taken any damage yet this game. An Aqua Jet obviously could break the Shadow Shield, but I don't know if that is going to be enough in the long run. We do see Ogerpon switch out here. Eric Rios making a bit of a gamble here, bringing Rillaboom in early. Again, potentially a sacrifice, but if this Rillaboom can make things happen, it also puts a ton of pressure on it to the opposing, or if this Rillaboom can make things happen, it puts a ton of pressure on the opposing Urshifu. We do see the Terrasilization coming through. I'm reading that this is going to be the Urshifu Terraing. Yeah, it's going into that Terra Water here. Surging Strikes does not KO Rillaboom or Lunala from this spot. This puts Urshifu into a spot where it's going to have to take a fake out and then a potential Grassy Glide or Wood Hammer afterwards. And Light Screen is just coming through from this Whimsicott. Again, Lunala is still going to be able to do a decent amount of damage no matter what. Surging Strikes comes through. Rillaboom is going to go down to a little above half HP, I believe. Yeah, still going to be feeling really, really good after this. And Lunala gets to throw out a little bit more damage. Rillaboom a little bit below half HP, a little bit above after Grassy Terrain recovery, I believe. So where is this Lunala targeting? Is it targeting the Urshifu or is it targeting the Whimsicott? So far, Eric has said Whimsicott simply doesn't matter in this game, and it is just going to be the Moongeist Beam coming through from Eric. Urshifu down to a little bit above half HP. Whimsicott taking a little bit of recovery as well. Urshifu not feeling too bad. Definitely within Wood Hammer range. I believe within Grassy Glide range, unless Eric's Rillaboom is just not very physically attacking trained, which could very well be the case. Marco is in a spot now where bringing in Miraidon isn't the worst thing in the world, you do set electric terrain up, but then you're potentially risking one of your Pokemon going, switching out and Miraidon coming into a Moonblast. Urshifu does just go for a Detect here. Grassy Glide does get blocked. I believe Eric is also going for another attack into this Urshifu. This might be Marco able to get a Moonblast off pretty cleanly. Yeah, Moonblast into the Rillaboom, does a decent amount of damage. Woo, another special attack drop. Would have been nice to get that on the Lunala, quite frankly. But Eric does get his own Moonblast off into the Whimsicott, taking it down once again by about a third of its HP. Again, Light Screen paying off pretty decently here. Urshifu, now again, math might be a little bit iffy. This Urshifu might have some defensive, might have some HP trained. Rillaboom might not be fully offensive. Grassy Glide here, I don't know if it KOs any longer. It was pretty close before, but I thought it would be the case. Don't know now. But Urshifu definitely goes down to a Wood Hammer if Rillaboom can survive. At the same time, Rillaboom might just want to get out as much damage as possible. So Marco not in an unwinnable spot. It's still definitely an uphill battle. But again, this Lunala just, how does Marco answer it? You have to break the Shadow Shield, and you have to get a ton of damage onto it. You can't hit it with Draco Meteor, and if you can't take down this Rillaboom, yeah, Grass Glide just does enough damage. If you can't take down this Rillaboom before the Miraidon comes in, which is going to have to happen now, then Rillaboom is just going to be able to reset the grassy terrain, and there's no shot that Electro Drifts are going to be able to do enough, especially since you've already Terra'd. Moonblast does break the Shadow Shield, but that HP is just going to get recovered by the combination of grassy terrain and leftovers. Moonblast takes Whimsicott down to just a fraction of its HP. It's down into the red. It would have been nice if it went down, but I ultimately think it does not matter. Eric Rios, Lunala already back at full HP. That Moonblast feels like it's genuinely not doing anything right now. Rillaboom healing back up. Tailwind does peter out. Whimsicott can go for a Tailwind now on this next turn, but Miraidon, it's in a 1v3. Its best bet is going to be maybe now to click Electro Drift. I feel like Dazzling might have been the move in game 1. Marco Silva went for Electro Drift. I feel like now maybe Electro Drift is your best bet in game number 2. At the very least, you'll have one turn of maximum damage out of this Electro Drift, but Miraidon is just so weak. It cannot Terra. Lunala can, I think a combination of Rillaboom plus Lunala double targeting into it should simply be enough to get the job done here. If Eric Rios wants to play incredibly safe, we could potentially see a Moonblast plus a switch out into the Ogerpon, but I don't even know if that is necessary. It could be a Protect even and switch out into the Ogerpon, but again, I don't think that's necessary. I think you just double target here and leave this Whimsicott to be the last thing on the field. Either Rillaboom goes down or Lunala takes a decent amount of damage but doesn't quite fall. You're able to KO the Miraidon, and if this ends up being a Ogerpon versus Whimsicott endgame, Ogerpon wins that 9 times, or honestly 10 times out of 10. Through that Shadow Shield, that still does a ton of damage. Again, it's as strong as a Draco Meteor. Moonblast is going to come through, but we already know that doesn't do a ton. Lunala's down to 54 HP, but we don't see a Protector. We don't see a switch out. Moonblast is going to be going into this Miraidon. It's going to take it down, no problem. Rillaboom now gets an attack off into this Whimsicott, which is not going to be able to withstand it. And Eric Rios, in 2-0 fashion, although that second game got a little bit dicey, takes a top 8 berth. There we go. That was a bit of an exciting game. I always like seeing those slower tempo games play out. Lunala with Shadow Shield, Terapagos with Terra Shell. They're always fun. It's a slower style of game. It's not about these huge nuclear levels of damage that we can see things like Miraidon put out. It's about a controlled, steady game plan that ultimately is able to kind of suffocate out the opponent with really good defensive Pokemon that can still pack a punch. So Eric Rios, another successful run so far. We've Marco Silva as well. We've seen both these players throughout this regional circuit do fairly well. Marco Silva, though, still just not quite able to grasp a regional win these last 2 tournaments that we've seen them on stream. So top 8 matches are going to be coming up next. So keep an eye out for them. Subscribe. Be safe. Be smart. Make wise decisions. And farewell.